everyone. My name is Joe Hnat. I'm a program manager at Collins Aerospace. We reside in Melbourne, Florida, which is about an hour away from here. I'm going to take you through a little bit of our lean journey. I partnered with a nonprofit, and I'll show you a lot of things that we were able to do with them. Give you a ton of lessons learned that can be applied. I heard in the last session lots of lessons learned that you guys were sharing about how to improve what you're doing, volunteer hours. I did bring some samples. So these plates, this actually came right from the garden on Saturday. I harvest these, various things. If you could name every item on this plate, you can take the plate home. So
the weed?
There is no weed. It's not legal in Florida yet. So in Oregon, he was just talking about Oregon. So, but there's a lot of good stuff on here. And this is really what I enjoy. You know, like we're able to actually produce vegetables from mostly seeds, and then provide them to a nonprofit that really needs them. And I'll tell you a little bit more about it. So I'll pass these around. You can take a gander at what's there. Some of them smell really good. So you can pick them up, get a feel for it, and some of them are really spicy, so be careful if you take a bite. So I'll give you a little bit of preface to this. Before I got involved with this, I had no garden experience in Florida. Not at all. I had a previous garden. I lived in Portland, Oregon, a little bit less than 2 years, and I got a chance to garden out there, which is pretty unbelievable because the soil's so great out there. And then when I was growing up with my dad was a big gardener, and he did his favorite vegetables, Brussels sprouts. I am active in the community. When I came to Melbourne, I spent a lot of time doing different things. So I coached basketball for 10 years. I was involved with a lot of the nonprofits. Big one you guys were talking about, Habitat for Humanity. I did that. I took groups of employees from our work and we built houses, so that was a lot of fun. And I have an engineering background. My simple definition is I'm a problem solver. And so you get tasked to go into a nonprofit which needs a lot of support and go help them. And so what you're going to see is some of those things. For the workshop objectives, so I'm going to share my experience, give you a little bit about lean and the nonprofit itself. I'm going to present to you what I came up with was our standard work for doing this for another corporate garden. And that's important because you can pretty much be ad hoc doing this all the time, but you really need a regimen of what you're going to do. What are the things that you're going to do to make sure you accomplish this for another corporate garden so they're successful, and then we can build it up in the community. And the last thing is get you excited. The big thing for me is I always tell everybody, go dig. That's my saying from day one. I want people to get out and get their hands dirty. That's a picture of my daughter. She was a big help when we first started the garden, but now she's preteen and she doesn't get her hands dirty. So right now she did a good job. So what's lean to me? And these definitions, you guys probably all heard. I mean, how many engineers are in this room right now? I think mostly everybody's probably had engineers in here, and you probably all heard of lean. And the big one for me, what was trained in my brain was elimination of waste. That was MUDA. You've heard that term, MUDA. And so that was the big thing, striving for perfection. You've heard that before. And then value added versus non-value added. And the last one is actually really important, but customer focused. I mean, if you went into a nonprofit and you just wanted to apply your techniques and improve something, you may miss the whole boat if you're not focused on the customer. And I'll share an example where we kind of missed the boat initially, and then we got our back together. Techniques that I've used, these are things that we were trained at Collins. Value stream mapping. Simple technique, but it gets you a lot of information really quick. It's where I would start on any project that I would perform. And then standard work involves a lot of different things. Visual controls is big, and then if you have a garden, you need some workplace organization because you got a lot of things going on, a lot of tools and so forth. So my challenge to all you guys is, as I go through this presentation, I want you to think about what you might have observed, what technique and what slide, when did I share that example? So think about those various techniques, okay? I'm going to share you, this is a neat picture for me. back in September 2013, this is what I was given. I was given land that basically was all rocks. Pretty much, that boat wasn't part of the property, but the boat was there. And they basically said, hey Joe, you can have all this land for your garden. And I said, wow. I mean, it's literally just a little bit less than what the size of this room is. And could you imagine making a garden out of that? So I got pretty excited. But as soon as we started digging, it was like, whoosh, it was all rocks. So we had to do a lot of work. And here we are, just a little bit of a month ago, we transformed the garden a little bit into what's called a food forest. And so it's a concept where you put a lot of fruit trees close together, and then you do a lot of maintaining and trimming, and you get a lot more fruits in one little small area. And this soil is months of mulch. There's probably about 6 to 8 inches of mulch here. And when we first we left that sit there for 6 months. You gotta have a lot of patience with gardens. But we let it sit there, and by the time we put our plants in, it was like black. You know, so that rock that was underneath was gone. It wasn't there because we were hitting good soil. That's the most important part. And there's all kinds of plants in here. Like we got bananas here, we got Barbados cherries, there's guava, there's lychee, there's passion fruit, there's moringa. Anybody heard of moringa? So in Florida now, moringa grows like crazy, which is unbelievable. It's one of the best. You can eat everything off the plant. If you notice, there was a part of moringa on there. I don't know if this was the green bean of a moringa. So if you let this grow more, you'll eventually get seeds and you can have fun and grow more trees. Hi. Hello. So that's where we are today. We're still going. That's one of the gardens we did. So we started actually 2 gardens. I'll show you that one too. So, you know, I had to, when we were starting this, you know, like you're all engineers, you work in the business, and I had an idea. I wanted to start a garden. I'm in Florida. You know, I actually needed help. I mean, Florida has a different season than anybody else. It's not so nice. My wife was a vegetarian, so by default, she cooked. I was a vegetarian, so it was pretty easy to go after veggies. And then there are homeless folks in the area. They get 1 meal per day. You know, most of us probably eat breakfast, probably have lunch. You know, eventually dinner. We get 3 meals. They get 1 meal a day. That's it. It's a pretty nice meal. It's considered a 7-course meal for them, but they only get 1 meal a day. And so our idea was, hey, how can I produce those fresh veggies for the homeless people and get somebody to sponsor it? That's the key. So I went to my company and I walked in and I said, hey, I want to have a land for a garden right on our corporate area. The answer was, I got rejected. I got rejected the very first time. The guy basically from the maintenance manager said, kind of Joe, whatever, you got lots of fun ideas, but we'll end up doing all the maintenance. So forget it, we're not doing it. So I went back on a second proposal, and I was actually on a business trip. And the funniest thing, I mean, I'll never forget this. I don't typically always pick up a local newspaper. That week I did. I pick up the paper, and there's an article in the newspaper. And there's a guy that says, hey, this guy named Joe, another Joe, started a garden at Rockwell Collins in Cedar Rapids, Iowa. So I clipped that paper, I ran down to maintenance, and I threw that on his desk, and we got accepted. So that was a big deal to get acceptance. And you know, you guys are always going to come up with these ideas. There's lots of proposals. If you're an engineering background, you're always thinking of something different. You got to be persistent. In this case, I think I was just lucky. Thank God that article, that I picked up that paper. I mean, what's the coincidence that I live in Florida, went to Iowa, opened the newspaper, and saw that article? So, pretty neat stuff. Big part of the lean journey is the plan. So these were the things that I really had to work on. What was the mission statement? What were we going to do as a team to make this happen? And again, a lot of things that you guys do, if you don't have a mission statement, you don't have no idea where you're headed. So we had to develop that. I had to organize the club. You know, there's no way I'm going to be doing the garden by myself. That's not going to happen. And we had to partner with a nonprofit. That became fairly easy after we did some research in the community. There's material and supplies, for a garden. And then, lastly, you have to have funding. So I've been fortunate. So Collins Aerospace actually does a green grant each year. And I have to come up with a proposal, a business paper, and timeline, and material supplies. And I basically say, hey, I'd like to have $1,500 for my garden. And so far, we've gotten it every year. So I've gotten it now for 5 years. And that helps, it makes it easy because nobody, you guys are, if you're gonna volunteer for Habitat or Restore or something like that, you're not gonna really spend a lot of money in your pocket. But if you get a company, a lot of you guys might be associated with big companies, that makes it 10 times easier. That was the initial garden on our corporate campus. So we put 4 planter boxes out there. Again, we really didn't know what we were doing. I mean, it's spaced terribly. It's in the middle of grass. The other thing that was really bad, there was a sprinkler system with reclaimed water. Now, if you know anything about reclaimed water, if it goes on the vegetables, you can't eat the vegetables. So you have to wash the vegetables. So, I mean, our first attempt at this garden on the corporate campus was a disaster. And then we really needed to get our act together. So we got back together and we started on the mission statement. And up there on the right-hand side is actually from the spreadsheet that we developed back in September. It was late 2013. And I took a snapshot right from the spreadsheet that we used back then. And we had a pretty simple one. Provide fresh produce to those in need. It was simple. We had to figure out who's our customer, who needs support, what do we know about the nonprofit, because that's important. One thing about coming up with a mission statement, and I see this all the time at work and stuff, somebody calls a meeting, we ought to be in a room, and somebody starts talking, and then another person starts talking, and you really need to set agendas. And this was a very important meeting. We had an agenda, we knew we had to figure out what the mission was, we knew how to figure out who the customer was, and we just followed it, and it really went pretty simple. But I definitely encourage that as you move forward in doing type of lean activities with nonprofits. So we partnered with this nonprofit called Daily Bread Incorporated. They're in Melbourne, Florida. Their vision there is that everybody has access to food and services so they become self-sufficient. When a person's homeless, there's a lot of things that they're going through in their life. Mentally, physically, there's a lot of things going on there. So that's what their vision is. They do about 225 meals every day. So that's a good amount of people coming through the cafeteria there. If you want to go check them out, I put the website out there. I imagine these presentations are going to be on your guys' sites. Material and supplies, I mean, Brian knows this, at Collins Aerospace, reuse, recycle. That's a big thing that's in our brains, and that's all part of IISE, and it's also part of 5S Workplace. But a lot of these things you see here, these planter boxes, all came from our stockroom. Every one of our planter boxes, I didn't pay for anything. I actually went to the stockroom, I looked around, and I saw boxes, and I couldn't believe they actually folded, came out, and were like 4 by 4. And so a nice garden size. All that wood was free. We got rain barrels from a local aloe company, bamboo sticks, trellises. Once you put a word out to employees, we got donations. Compost and kitchen scraps are pretty easy. You need compost. We got soil from a local company. We do pay for some of the soil, but we do get sometimes donated for free. And then mulch. There's a local company here in Florida, probably all over the nation, called Ashblunt. And if you tell them what you're trying to do, you just say, hey, I need to dump a mulch. They come over and dump a truckload of mulch. And I'm talking, like that's one dump. So that's a lot of mulch. And so it goes a long way. But you gotta have material and supplies. Here's our timeline, from 2013. This is when we started it, and here we are to 2019. From here to when it started, vegetables were pretty much the end of 2014. I kind of say we had a free for all of gardening. I'll never forget. There was a bunch of employees volunteering, and one person said, "Hey Joe, do you mind if I put a pumpkin in the vegetable patch?" And I'm like, yeah, sure, no problem. Go ahead, put a pumpkin. Well, then several weeks later, we had strands of pumpkin. They go on. They'll go all the way to the wall there and that wall back. And so it took over the entire garden. And so we were like, well, and garden pumpkins actually don't do well in Florida, so it didn't really work out for us. So we planted in one planter box and had different vegetables all over the place, and one planter box took over the entire garden. And we were like, all right, we really screwed up.
They just spread on their own?
Oh yeah, they'll spread. The stems will just go on forever. Yeah, it's wild. So it was a disaster. That's what I'm saying. I'll tell you, I would say, here in our timeline, we came up with a consistent vegetable plan. That's when we finally got our act together. And it really was the time when we went to the nonprofit and said, hey, what would you like? And they said, Joe, you can provide us salads. That would be great. So what's in the salad? Pretty easy. You got lettuce or spinach, you got radishes or onions, tomatoes. These are something that we can actually do in Florida. So we finally got our consistent plan going forward. The other thing that was kind of neat here, we actually did an intranet site for employees. So everything that we did, I took pictures of. So if they volunteered, they were there to check it out. And this has been huge for us with getting more people to volunteer, getting ourselves visible with leadership. I would definitely start this maybe even earlier, but it's just when it happened. The other neat thing is, and I'll touch on this and show a couple things, but you can do a lot of education to people leaving outside your company. So we brought Girl Scouts in, and the Girl Scouts they're coming up, I think in June, they're gonna come again this year. But you can really do a lot of neat things, not just with your own company, but with people outside of the community. And then in 2017, I had this idea, hey, we have 2 gardens feeding this nonprofit. My goal is to get a total of 5. So we started soliciting other corporations, and I'll show you one of the ones that we got started this year. So, and actually, it's right here. Not Embriere is another company in the local area, Melbourne. They actually kicked off their garden, and I have a slide on that. Let's go to the next slide. Here's the community impact. There's me with a bunch of Girl Scouts, and it's funny how you ask people, Brian and I were talking about this last night, it's like a lot of people don't even know where food comes from. They don't know how it grows. And so if I can impact some of the younger people with a couple seeds, with some dirt, some water, and they can see the plant grow, they just learn so much in life. And so you really get this going for other people. And then they were very helpful in making our garden a lot nicer because there were a lot of weeds in there that they helped clean up. So we took advantage of there's no child labor acts, I don't think, for volunteers, I don't think. So give you an idea, we got some more people in the room that came in, but we do have some plates of vegetables up here. But these are the type of vegetables that we've grown over the years. We got tons of, there's beans and hot cayenne peppers and green peppers, tomatoes. Radishes are really easy in Florida in the winter to grow. The creative rhubarb, eggplant. You got some kale, some collards. You got papayas, carrots. This is sweet potatoes, and then broccoli. So anybody's going to start gardening in Florida, you're pretty much going to do sweet potatoes and okra in the summer months, and then everything else you grow in the winter, and so forth. So I know it's 5 o'clock too. So I know you guys are getting hungry. So this is halfway to the slide package. So I'll keep going. So these are our lessons learned. Some of the lessons that I've on this journey that I thought I could share with you guys. Your initial adversary could be your biggest advocate. So that maintenance guy that said no to me, he's been the best person for the garden. He actually has offered landscaping services to help us. He actually built a fence for us. He put a water source in for us. He asked me if I need any mulch. He's asked me if I want to put some kind of seed plant, structure to grow the plants. So even though we had a little rough start, sometimes in lean, I can tell you this, if you're in the professional side and you're working on manufacturing, the biggest guy that's against it, go ahead and try to figure out how to defeat that person and get him on your side. Because once the guy who's the biggest obstacle is for lean, it's easy for you. You just turn and say, hey Brian, what do you think about lean? And all of a sudden he's speaking for you. I don't even have to sell it anymore. So you got to get to your biggest, you got to find out which guy you want to overcome. The second one, having volunteers. I heard in the session before, volunteering is the toughest thing. We have 1,500 employees at our site. I had this idea I could get 5% of those people. Man, that'd be awesome. Look at 5%, 75 people. You think I have 75 people volunteer? No way, Jose. I have probably on a regular basis 2 to 5 people that come and help with the garden. I got about 30 people on the distribution list that from time to time will come, but we're nowhere near 5% that I thought I could get. So it's very difficult, whatever you're doing with nonprofits, to get volunteers. The gotcha though is this, and I challenge everybody here, how many people have volunteered in the past year? Right? So I would ask you to try to double down on that. Try to do it twice. Because the biggest thing with volunteering is that once you do it, get your foot in the door, you'll end up probably doing it again. And then all of a sudden you'll bring your friends or you bring your family. And it really makes a difference for the community. Gardening for fun could lead to serious gardening. I would say I'm addicted. My wife always laughed at me. She says, "Where are you at?" I'm either at the nonprofit gardens or I'm at home. So I'm definitely there. Producing vegetables will have success and failures. That's some years you're going to be infested by pests. Some years you're going to have droughts. You just got to figure it out. And then the lesson there, the endless smiles. There's one of our volunteers, Sridhar. He's helped us several times with the garden, but every time I go, everybody smiles. So that helps us. It's teamwork. Here's an example of some of the employees from Collins. This picture right here is from the very first early days. This is probably about 2015, and this was just recent end of 2018. And so it's really nice. You got to have teamwork. You're, again, not going to do lean. You're not going to do nonprofit support without a team. That is, you might be a very smart person, and you go in there and you think you're going to change it. You got to go build a team. And so that's one of the most important things there to get going. Okay, so this is what we came up with. We've done this. I've done 2 nonprofit gardens with my company, and we came up with this in 3 phases. You got a proposal phase. You got to check into the grants. The emphasis on funding is very important because no one's going to be able to do this just out of your pockets. You got to have the funding, so that's important. And then you got to gain acceptance from your company. And for me, it was the maintenance manager. That's who I had to convince, and you saw how that went. But you got to find that person in the company that's going to back you, a sponsor of some sort. That's either going to help you with the money or not. The second is this is probably the biggest phase, this planning phase. You guys know that if you're doing a project, you really need to spend a lot of time up front rather than just jumping into it. That's just 101. But for me, seeking the volunteers, creating that vision statement. We got volunteers outside the company. Where are you going to put the garden? That's important. What's the layout going to look like? Can you get items donated? That's important. And then the water source. Some people forget about that. But that's an important planning phase. And I did this whole checklist is what I've given to Embraer, and we just followed right through all the checklists and got their garden started. Probably less than a couple months. And the last phase, the dig phase, you got to go purchase your materials. One thing that emphasizes documenting what you get. So your purchases, your donations, you're going to go back later and look at your list and say, hey, where did I get all that soil from? Or who gave me that mulch for free? That's going to be important. Start building the garden and then wait about 2 to 4 months and harvest vegetables. So this is really the standard work for any corporate garden that I'm going to work with going forward. They would get a sheet of this, and we'd say, let's go. I got another one in process right now that we're just in the proposal phase, and so we'll see how that goes. Lots of things to consider. Again, this is more into the garden side of things, you know, in terms of all the different items that you would need in order to make it successful. But just make some examples. I came up with a projected timeline because everybody wants to ask, hey, how long would it take to do this? You know, if you got into it, what would it be? And you got to have an answer for that. You can't just say, oh, you'll get it in a couple months. That's not going to work. You got to have a timeline. So I came up with just, you know, forming a team, selecting it. It's all part of the standard work, and it's about a 12-month cycle. So if you're going to start a corporate garden, you're just plan for 12 months. These are some of the corporate garden lessons. So as we did this is what the team has issued. So you saw my lesson with location. When we first did the corporate garden on our campus, it was definitely in the wrong place. So we put it in the right place. Don't fear asking employees or community to donate. That's important. You know, one of the things that's difficult with getting up in front of people is asking them, hey, do you have any money to support this? Or do you have any items to donate? You just got to go do it. And you'd be amazed that people really want to donate. Consider fruit in the garden was one. Learn from others. We're fortunate in Florida, and there's probably I know you guys are from other states here, but University of Florida has a great planting guide. So I didn't come up with the seasonal vegetables that we're going to do. I went to my local university and said, what do you got from my region? And I got a recipe of what vegetables would work good in our area. Pretty simple, but I looked, other states had it. You know, I looked at different states, and they're all out there. We did a t-shirt for garden members, so if you donated twice, you get a t-shirt. Sometimes that motivates people to do it. Attempt to be organic. Take time on the designing the layout. When you do your layout, once you have a planter in place with dirt, you're not going to move it. It's hard. And then think about your walkways. You got to make it look good. So we've done hay over time, and we've done mulch. So you just got to do something that looks nice. So this was our third garden. This was Embriere in Melbourne, and you can see, you know, this was their initial kickoff. They had, gosh, they must have 15, 20 employees come out in an afternoon, and they started installing all the plants. And so this is a big deal. So I'm more than halfway. I got 3 out of 5 gardens. I need to get to 5. And so this is actually, this person in red, that's actually the executive director from Daily Bread. So he actually came to the event, supported the local company, and he's going to receive those food from Embriere. Big deal. Again, references. This is, you know, if you're going to get into the corporate gardening and anything you do with lean and stuff, you gotta do some education. So these are the type of things that I went through in order to make a garden successful. I mean, we talked about U of F. Down here in Florida, there's a guy named David the Good. He doesn't give his last name, he's just David the Good. He's excellent with Florida gardening. I wouldn't say he applied to like maybe Pennsylvania or Oregon, but for Florida, this is the best guy that I'm aware of. Mother Earth News magazines, local nurseries. There's also this term Master Gardener. There's a certificate program, so there are local guys there. You can get a lot of details. And then hands-on, you know, it's just, you got to get your hands dirty and get out in the gardens. So lean summary. So in the very beginning, we talked about the different techniques, you know, value stream mapping, standard work, visual control, the 5S workplace, customer focus. So in these, there's examples throughout this whole nonprofit partnership where we were able to apply techniques that I typically would use in the manufacturing world. You can apply it to a nonprofit. And it wasn't like, I didn't have to do much more different, you know, than I normally do. I could apply it right to a nonprofit and creating a garden. Brian and I met some folks, and you can apply this to all kinds of things. You can apply it to adult beverage distribution and management. You You can do it, some of these parks that are in the area, lean can be applied to lots of various organizations. Nonprofits, to me, is a big one because you're giving back to the community. And these are all the different things that would line up with those techniques. I put my email up there. If you had a big interest in doing corporate gardening and you needed some input in the Kickstart, you can always give me an email. I'm okay with providing information to you guys. So I would kick it off now for questions.
Yeah, the main postal distribution center in Manhattan, New York City, put a rooftop garden.
Yeah.
You know about it?
No, I've seen them. I've seen them before. They're great. Yeah. You do a lot with them.
I used to work there, that's how I found out.
Yeah. I've always wanted to do that in Florida because there's lots of roofs not being used, even solar panels, but I think you can do a lot of rooftop garden. What other questions come to your mind?
Oh, I know. Did you have to set up a non-conflict designation for the group because you were doing grant writing and had to keep track of receipts and expenditures? Were you required to have an oversight third party on the funding?
Yeah, so everything I do is documented with purchases, donations, and everything's routed through the nonprofit. And so all the documentation they have to have. And then if I need to get reimbursed,
Oh, so it's with your partner?
Yes, they get the money.
So you didn't set up your own?
No,
Okay.
I'm not a nonprofit.
Okay.
Our corporation donated a grant.
Okay.
And it went to the nonprofit.
Okay.
And then I get reimbursed with that grant.
Okay.
For purchase items and stuff.
Okay.
Yep.
I remember you started talking about like how the families get like one meal a day, and then I kind of did some of the stats after that. What kind of yield did you guys say you're getting for like the families in the area, or what's kind of just, can you share some stats with like kind of the volume and the output you're getting? Like,
So
just general
there's
stuff?
225 meals a day go out, and we're nowhere near supporting that many. So a lot of the food actually comes through other channels. For our vegetables, it depends on the month or the year. We'll get bags of food out of our garden. Like I'll give you kale this summer, or it would be in the spring. We yielded that thing 6 times, and every time we did that, we had 2-3 bags worth, like brown bags of kale taken to the nonprofit. So some of your vegetables will yield really well. Some, you figure out that you probably won't do that one again. We don't. Unfortunately, one thing we're not doing. I'm not measuring it. So I see a lot of these. I see a lot of other organizations measure, like they actually weigh the amount of vegetables, and we haven't done that. Sometimes I just want to get the food right to them and then go home and.
Makes sense.
Yeah. All right, so I'm going to transition, and thank you very much,
Thanks,
guys.